The number one question I get asked on my social media channels: how much do I water this plant, that plant, this plant, that plant? So many times. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to try to create a nice and succinct video on the factors that lead to the answer of that question: how often should you water your plant? Now, of course, this question, this topic is very vast, very deep, so I'm going to do my best to lay out the factors that should go into your mindset when you're determining how often you should be watering your plant. Now, this question is kind of like, how much food should I eat to get full? Well, did you do a 5-mile run that morning? Did you eat 1 hour ago? Have you been increasing your muscular exercises and you have more muscles that need to be fed? There's a lot of factors that go into that decision and to coming to a conclusion: all right, my belly feels full. And it is exactly the same thing when it comes to how often I should water my plant. Now, of course, the three most basic elements that we need to think about when we're watering our plants is the amount of sunlight, the temperature, and the size of the container that your plant is actually living and growing in. And those three factors together will help you decide how often you should be watering your plants. And the most interesting thing is that sometimes a plant that is as small as this beautiful philodendron painted lady in this tiny little 3.5-inch pot is going to need to be watered just as often as this big, bold, beautiful philodendron little Phil in this large 5 or 10-gallon pot that it's in. So as we remember from Botany 101, the way that photosynthesis essentially works is that when there's light present from the sunlight, from grow lights, wherever, the sun will absorb that light. It's going to combine with water that's already present in the soil, in the roots, in the plant material, and that combination of the water and the light is going to create a sort of energy that the plant can use to then grow. And this process is expedited with an increase in temperature. So having a very general idea of how photosynthesis works, you start to get an understanding of why the plants actually need water, and in what instances they're going to need more water or less water, essentially according to how much sunlight it has and how warm or cool of a growing environment that it currently is in. But the story doesn't end there. All right, students, class is in session. Let's take a look at my hand-drawn PowerPoint slide to take a look at these three factors and how they interplay when determining how often you should be watering your plants. All right, so here we can see we have sun, we have temperature, and then we have the size of the container relative to the size of the plant material. Now, these three factors all work together. The more sun, the greater the warmth, the smaller the container relative to the size of the plant material is going to be the most water that you will need to be providing your plant. AKA, you're going to be needing to water your plant quite frequently. Now, as you move out of these concentric circles further away from that central area with less sunlight, with less warmth, and with a greater size container relative to the size of the plant, then you are getting less and less water. So, a very shady spot with cool temperatures and a large container that has very small plant material, that's going to require very little water, generally speaking. In fact, so little water probably because your plant will be dead, because those are suboptimal conditions. Now, the reason that I make such a big point about the size of the plant material relative to the size of the container is for the simple fact of the matter that as a plant becomes larger in that container, it means it's filling the pot with more and more roots. And the more and more roots there are, the more and more growth there will be on top. It means that it's using that water more quickly to provide enough nutrients for all of that excess top growth. So a plant that was half the size of this in this container is necessarily going to need less water than a plant this size in this container, assuming we're talking about the same plant. And alternatively, a plant that is of equal size in an equal sized container in a room that is constant in temperature, but where one plant has less sunlight and one plant has more sunlight because it's closer to the window and it's also closer to a grow light. well then this plant is necessarily going to need more water than this guy. Now the reason why I made such a big point about a plant that doesn't get much sunlight and it's in a cold room and it's in a pot that's way too large for the size of plant material, probably going to be an unhappy and likely dead plant, is because if you consider a small plant such as this little guy, if I were to take this and plant it in a large container such as this planter back here, what's going to happen? I plant it in there, I give it water. Now this plot has so much excess soil compared to the amount of roots that this plant actually has, that soil is just going to stay wet. But if there's just so much excess water in there, what's going to happen is that soil can actually remain waterlogged. That's going to reduce the amount of available oxygen and airspace in the actual soil, and that is what leads to root rot. So that's another reason why we want to plant plants in their appropriate size containers from the beginning and only transplant them at the appropriate time when they're actually ready for that transplantation. Okay, so in conclusion, to determine how often you should be watering plants, all you really need to do is look at a calendar, choose a day of the week, and then go every single day to water your plants on that assigned day. That is incorrect. That is not the right answer. You should not be creating a watering schedule based on the days of the week or based on a simple every fourth day, every fifth day. No. While that actually may tend to happen every fourth day, you find that you need to water your plants, you do not create your watering schedule based around some sort of pattern like that. What you do is you determine the amount of sunlight that your plants are actively receiving on a day-to-day basis, which changes according to the month, according to the season, according to the time of year, according to the amount of amount of lights that you have in the area, the available window space, and all such factors as that. So that's factor number one. Factor number two is the temperature, which of course also changes throughout the year. Many times in the summertime, your house will be exceptionally warm. Gonna need to water your plants more often. In the wintertime, you're gonna water your plants less often, just because of the simple fact that it's cooler inside your home. And the third factor is the proportion of the size of your container to the size of the plant growing in the container. We always want to have a nice proportion that is closer to this rather than this. This is a recipe for very bad plant results, often leading into root rot. And with that nice even keel proportion, combined with good sun exposure and warmer temperatures, you're gonna be watering your plants more often. And with less lighting and cooler temperatures, you're gonna be watering your plant less often. Of course, there are some other factors, including the type of soil substrate that you're gonna be growing in. Most people will typically be growing in bagged potting mix from your box stores, from your garden centers, and for that reason that I'm kind of avoiding that topic in this equation. But if you are savvy enough to know about different substrates, then probably this video is not for you anyway. So we're gonna leave that for another video. I am going to be making a second video giving some more detailed examples about 3 of my favorite plants, particularly a couple species of anthurium, fiddle-leaf fig, and a Pilea peperomioides, the Chinese money plant, and giving a little bit more detailed information on how I determine how I actively want to be watering those plants and how I actually come to those conclusions. But for now, if you have enjoyed this video and you do think that it has helped you understand your plants a little bit more, how often you should be watering them, definitely give a little like for the video. Think about subscribing to our channel. We're bringing new videos every single weekend. And once you click that subscribe button, don't forget, click that little bell to receive notifications for our weekly video updates. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I will catch you soon. Ciao.